The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Miniature War Games, and the generous donations of you, the listeners. Special thanks to Tom Stoller, Alex McIntosh, and Peter West. Your support really counts, guys. Thank you so much for your donations. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode number 148. Planetfall review, with hosts Neil Shuck, Mike Hobbs and Mike Whitaker. This show was recorded between the 8th and the 22nd of May 2015. Yeah, sorry, this one's taken quite a bit of time to actually get onto the air. So apologies that we start off talking about Salute. It was relevant at the time we recorded the show, and I decided to leave it in because, well, you know, we had a couple of things to say which we thought I thought it was still relevant, to be honest. So I left them in, but apologies if it now sounds a little bit out of date. It's just one of those things we recorded the show, and then several other things happened, and then we put other shows in the meantime. But I hope that doesn't spoil your listening enjoyment too much. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. I'm Neil Shuck, and today I'm joined by Mike Hobbs. Hello, Mike.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Here we are, we've survived Salute,
yes,
and we're back on the airwaves.
It's that post-Salute come down that we all love. It's all over, another year, and I managed to get away for the whole thing, only spending £30.
That's pretty impressive. I actually possibly spent. Yeah, I think I spent about the same, and that included a pre-order.
That was actually a pre-order from our good friend Mr. Miller, and when I picked up my 2 copies of To the Strongest.
Oh yes. It was good to see Simon again, despite the fact that he didn't recognise me until I opened my mouth.
I had a lot of that. People come up to me saying, "Are you Mike?" Because they recognise my voice.
It's always a bizarre one, isn't it?
Yeah, I find that strange.
But obviously, as famous voices, or infamous voices, I suppose it's what's to be expected. Yeah. But there you go. No, that was funny. No, it's good to see Simon and several other people and. Several people were commenting that this year I appear to be interviewing everything that moved.
Yes.
Yes. Which, well, yeah. I mean, I was really pleased. It actually worked out really well. I mean, the thing was actually, despite getting around quite a few people, there were still so many people I missed.
It was just huge.
It was a big show this year.
Yeah. I think somebody worked it out that you needed like 2 minutes. Or you could spend 2 minutes on every trader and game.
Wasn't that our mate Mr. Whitaker?
It sounds like the sort of thing he'd do.
Yeah, because he was blogging about show organisation and games and stuff. And I mean, obviously, as you heard on the podcast, he was doing this quite quick Dam Busters game. But yeah, on one of his blogs, he was talking about the average amount of time that you would need to get around the entire show, and it is at the point. Well, it's been at the point for a while, but certainly it's a case of you just cannot see everything. And I mean, I'll say a thank you to everybody who actually took photos
Yes.
because that's actually the only way I got to see most of the games. I think I only saw half a dozen of the games half a dozen or so of the games during the day. Because as I say, you're busy demoing all day. I'm running around trying to speak to people, and actually, it's amazing how much of the show you don't see, which in some ways is a shame. But at least you get to see the photos afterwards. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, you just don't realise the scale of it. I mean, the guys down the club, Stu McCormdale and Darryl, they put on a demo game for Foreground of their new rules, and it's a 24 by 12 table, and they've been working on it for months. So I've been watching this thing get built in Firestorm, and I literally couldn't find it in the show, and it's a 24-foot.
I was going to say, I never saw that. I never saw that at all.
It wasn't a tiny little 4x6 that was hidden away in the corner, and it was by the side of Foreground's stop, and I still missed it. I still.
Foreground had, it was amazing. Actually, I was really. Foreground had one of the biggest display stands there, didn't they? I mean, size-wise, they're getting to rival the likes of Grit and Beast and Wayland, and it's a big stand they got this time.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I was actually looking out for it, and I missed it completely.
Yeah, I managed to find it right there when they were packing it up. It was literally when all the public had gone. I then found it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was like that Battle for Hoth game that Beasts of War were putting on. The only way you could see it was the fact that you could see the 3 deep scrum around the table.
I walked past that one early on because I went to see the Spartan Games before the show opened, and I think it was just opposite the Spartan site. And I just turned around and seen a couple of great big AT-ATs and thinking, I'm just going to look at that in a minute. And I never got around to it.
No. If they're looking around at, I think we said on the podcast, looking around at some of the games, and you kind of go think, and you start looking around at stuff and looking at what's on some of the tables, and you're kind of thinking, it actually boggles the mind when you actually start trying to put some monetary values on some of these things that's on. You kind of go, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, did someone say it was 8,000 people from the door?
I must admit, I haven't heard it. I heard there was best part of 6,000 pre-sales. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, we were saying again on the day when we talked. It seemed bigger than it used to be. Yeah. But for once, it didn't really feel crowded. I actually thought it had quite a nice feel about it. Because I know several people do not like Salute because of the size, and they think it's a bit of a soulless animal. I actually felt it was all right.
Yeah, I like it in the XL. After going to Olympia a few times, and now for me it's XL. I don't care if it's a great big aircraft hangar. It's a great big aircraft hangar stuffed full of some of the best games and people that you'll ever meet.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, just to say thank you to everybody who did kind of pop up and say hi. It was nice. It was nice to meet up with people. It was nice to meet up with listeners, and a special thank you to Jonathan.
Yes.
Who came all the way from Canada
just to see us.
Just to see us, indeed. Yeah. So it was great to meet Jonathan. So hello, Jonathan. Glad you made it back to Canada safe. And it was a really good day. It was a really good day. Really enjoyed it. But of course, now Salute's come and gone. Amongst other things, there are now things that we can talk about, which we haven't been able to talk about for months.
Yeah. Halo.
Halo, indeed. Yes. Yeah. So obviously, people finally got to see the things that, some things that we knew about for months, some things that we knew about for a few weeks, and a couple of things that we hadn't seen yet. Looks interesting.
Yeah, the Halo game itself looks really good, really, really interesting. I think we're going to have to get Derek on to go through the rules and do a nice review.
Yeah. I mean, it was great to chat to Derek, even for the short time that we did. It sounds like a really interesting game. So yeah, on that front, we are going to get Derek on the show, and it will be great to talk to him and chat through it. Some fantastic models. Covenant Assault Carrier is an epic model that is really, really nice. It's currently on my it's currently the picture on my desktop at work because it was just like it's a fabulous model, and it's huge.
Yeah, what did I say, 26 centimeters long,
something like that. It's one of those models. I mean, as Neil's talked about in the past, some of these things having the models on people's shelves. For some people, that would be it. No, that's really cool. And of course, we can now talk about the fact that the ground combat game, and it's 15 mil.
Yes.
Which will be a surprise to quite a few people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the first of the next series of games that they're doing. But 15 mil, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see. It was like the other week, but it's actually a couple of months ago. We got to go down to Spartan Towers, which is one of the things that ended up prompting this podcast, actually. But we got to go down to Spartan Towers back end of February, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, quite. Yes, it's a long time ago now. Crikey. Part of the intention of that was to go and play Halo, or go and play Halo Fleet Battles. And unfortunately, the rules weren't ready. We had an email. It's about 3 days before, 2-3 days before, wasn't it? Kind of going, the rules aren't ready, but come down anyway. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough.
I thought the model were ready. They didn't get because they were waiting for the pre-production plastics to come back.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah.
I thought it was. Whatever it was that we're not ready for you. So unfortunately, that was put on hold. But they said, come down anyway, and I'm sure we'll get a game or something. Which is where all this thing about Planetfall came about, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But no, but when we were down there, I think Mr. Fawcett couldn't help himself, could he? He was just going, oh, have a look at this, and oh, have a look at this, oh, and while you're at it, have a look at this.
Yeah.
And then it was like, but you can't say anything about it.
Yeah, we were literally going, can we talk about this? No. Look at this. Can we talk about this? No. Do you want me to sign anything? Yes.
It was like really funny when you had, when as soon as there was a whiff of the Halo Ground Combat game, and we looked at the forums, everyone was, it's going to be 28 mil, it's going to be 28 mil, and we're kind of going, no, it's not. People are going to be really surprised, but it's not. The stuff for that is looking really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything at all about Halo. I still don't know anything, but from a game perspective, it does look nice.
Yeah. So lots to talk about on that, and as I said, we'd seen the renders for the Ground Combat game Infantry, and I think I hinted in one thing that I'd seen a render for we'd seen some things in the flesh, and they were nice, and hopefully now people have seen them, and I told you they were nice. Yeah. Grunts and Elites for Covenant and Spartans and what have you, and the Warthog, umpteen different variations of Warthogs and what have you. It's great. Loads and loads and loads of stuff coming. The Fleet Battles game is out imminently. Couldn't believe how much they crammed in the box.
Yeah.
But as I say, we're going to get Derek on the show and talk all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's for a future show in the not too distant future, I hope. We're still sorting things out, and to be honest, we're at a point where we're kind of like sorting things out for the summer season as far as who we're talking to at the moment. So I mean, we've got a lot of people that we were hoping to that we lined up at the start of the year to chat to, which we still haven't chatted to. So lots of things to do, lots of things to talk about in forthcoming shows. And several reviews to do, but lots of interviews to do as well. As mentioned, Great Escape Games have got a new World War II game coming out. We want to talk to Stuart about that, and loads of different things to do. But we have a show to do today, and as a result of visiting Spartan, I got involved in a new game. I mean, Mike was Mike had kind of. This is one of those games that fell off the shelf, didn't it?
It's research. It's all research for the podcast.
It's all research for the podcast, so you're blaming me, is that it?
That's excuse number 5.
Right.
We are planning to do a section on the upcoming podcast on excuses for buying figures and the best ways to sneak in past your wife or husband.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Mike's carried to stashing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think over the years both of us have done a fair amount of that, but yes. Passing quickly on. But
But,
indeed.
Me buying Planetfall was just research. I just happen to like it.
Right, okay. And of course, the fact that it's now provided you with, it's not a job as such, is it? It's more of a case of...
Go on, find the words.
I was going to say, how do you describe it, or is it a job?
I'm doing a similar job. It's not really a job. It's definitely, if there's any tax people that listen, it's not a job. I'm not being paid. I'm helping out a small company by being like, I've applied to people in their vanguards, so it's similar to what I do with Whip and Beast as well.
Yeah.
So it's demoing games and things.
Yes. Mike, yes. So Mike is now a professional fanboy for more than one company.
Oh, yeah. My fanboyism knows no bounds.
Indeed. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be reviewing Planetfall from Spartan Games.
Medic! I don't like it, Sergeant. Me neither, sir. Good Lord, it's really looking pretty bad. Yes, sir. It happens every time, sir. It's too predictable, sir. How far do you think we've advanced, Sergeant? 6 inches, sir. It's always 6 inches. We advance 6 inches, then Jerry gets a go. The lads are calling it Hi-Go Hugo, sir. Hi-Go Hugo? Good grief. And they don't like it, sir. Oh. No, not like it. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Rather like cricket. We have an innings, then the other chap does. Well, that's all very well, sir, cricket, sir, but begging your pardon, it ain't like that, sir, in war. I don't think Mr. Hitler plays like that. What, Hitler? No, gosh, he'd like to go all the time. Oh, no, sir, lummy. Well, sir, anyway, sir, it's like this, sir. If it carries on like this, Hi-Go Hugo, me and the lads won't be coming to your Thursday evening games club, and that's the way it is, sir. Looking for more of a challenge with your World War II games? Are you tired of the predictability of Hi-Go Hugo systems? Iron Bean Shopman provides real command challenges on an unpredictable battlefield. Two fat lardies, playing the period and not the rules since 2002. Pip pip.
Well, as you said, on this part of the show, myself and Mike are going to be talking, we're going to be reviewing the rules of Planetfall and talking about the way the game works. We're then going to get together with Mike Whitaker, who's also been playing a bit of Planetfall, and discuss what we like and don't like about the game. So that's to come after the review. But first off, we're just going to chat about the rules and just explain what the game's all about, really. Okay, so first off, Planetfall is a game that's it's been around for a while, hasn't it? It's kind of been in two different forms because it first appeared as like a little almost like a proof of concept game, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a side project of Spartan Games have got this sort of design studio area called Studio Sparta, and I think for a while they wanted to do a little ground combat game, so they came up with some rules and they released two factions or two small armies, And the rules are free, and if you didn't have any old figures to proxy, you could buy these 2 sort of starter armies.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a public beta test to play around with the rules and stuff and just get the concepts. So they did that. And then obviously it went quiet because they were working on it in the background. They obviously brought Derek in, who's personally I think has actually changed the way I think that Spartan are producing rules. He's very good at writing rules, and he understands the concepts. And I think Neil has taken a bit of a back seat now on the rules writing.
Yeah.
So they, the rules are coming out a lot more cleaner now, and I think we've seen this before with Spartan. Because let's be honest, I've been quite critical of Spartan in the past.
And me too. Yeah.
But they're getting their act together, which I think what they did in Old Planetfall is good, because they played around with it. You could get into it if you wanted to, and then went quiet. They refined the rules, and now the rules have come out. And this is one of the first games I've played of a Spartan game that I really like straight off. It just plays really well. There's nice concepts in it. But yeah, it's a 10mm sci-fi big battle game.
Yeah. So it's in the same universe as Firestorm Armada.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is their spaceship game.
Yeah. So from a concept point of view, of course, so from a campaign point of view, you could fight in space, and then the next thing you are fighting a ground engagement. Okay, so that's what it is. So yeah, it's 10mm.
Mm-hmm.
There are currently 6 factions, is it?
Yeah, there's the whole sort of universe that they've created, this Firestorm universe. It's based around, there's 2 main factions, which are the Alliance of Karak and the Xenian League. And then in those 2 main factions, you've got a bunch of allied races. So each of the 2 main factions have got 3 major allies and then a whole group of smaller races in there. So we start off with the Tindrenzi, there's Terrans, there's Aquans, there's the Ceruleans, which are like reptiles, the Directorate, which is like a corporate corporation. A corporate corporation, you say? Yes, a corporate corporation. And then there's the Repulsor, which that's pretty much like a swarm army. They're pretty much space spiders. Those are the 6 main factions, and there's 3 on each side. And then you've got allies which are attached to them.
Yeah, and that comes out in the way armies are put together and everything, but obviously we'll come on to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've mentioned it's 10mm, so what sort of game, and it's a ground combat game, but what sort of level of game are we looking at?
You're looking at a sort of company level, I guess. It's quite hard to describe it, because the armies are created using what's called a helix setup, where in your army you'll have a number of battle groups. Normally you'll have 1 battle group, and that battle group will have what's called a core helix. So think of that as your company command section. It will have, there's troops in it that you have to have. It's got the command elements in there. There might be some attached infantry or some recon or some armor. But that's your core. So every battle group has 1 core in it. And then at least, yeah. And then around each core helix, you have the option to buy another 6 helixes, and each of those are different types. That all goes into the army building thing. But basically, it's done like that. So each of the helixes around your core helix has a particular function. So it might be like a recon helix, or an aerial, or a Leviathan sort of strike helix, which is like a big monster one, a big robot one. And there's all on there. So each helix gives you a different tactical choice, and they've got very nice rules on how you actually use the helixes to put your army together, which I think we'll come into a bit more detail after we've sort of discussed a few more little bits involved.
Yeah.
But it's a nice, graceful way of doing it. Obviously, it's point driven, but it's quite compact, shall I say. You don't have free reign.
It is very well put together as far as that's concerned. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk a bit more about army creation in a minute. As you say, it's kind of company level ish, but think of it as a battle as a battle group. So it's, but I say, especially with being 10mm, obviously you can get away with quite a few things on the table. At the end of the day, it's infantry and small vehicles are important, but you also get big tanks.
Yes, you do.
Yes,
big tank and big stompy robots.
But we'll comment on that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you said it's company level, so we're going to need a massive table, aren't we?
No, I mean, you can play a sort of small size game on about a 4x4. I tend to play on a 6x4, but obviously the bigger the game, the more space you need.
Yeah. I mean, basically, as you said, it's a points-driven game, and they basically turn around and say, well, up to this size engagement, this is the sort of table you should be playing on. And to be honest, you can play on a 6x4 table until you've got pretty decent-sized forces on the table. I mean, I think it's something like 6,000 points. I think it is. They recommend playing on a 6x4. 6,000 points is quite a bit of kit.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. To be honest, I tend to play it with quite a bit of terrain and scenery on it. I think that's actually cuts down on the Arcs of Fire. We played it on with a 3,000 point game actually yesterday on a 6x4, and it was nice. There was enough space there to play it. I think if you get to about 4,500 points, that's when I probably look to move up.
Right. Okay.
And to give you an idea, 3,000 points, you're looking at about 30 models a side.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, the game is set so you're playing with squadrons. So you've got squadrons of tanks, platoons of infantry. A squadron of tanks can be anything from, say, 5 light tanks, 2 or 3 medium tanks, 1 or 2 heavy tanks, and so that's where you kind of get your models, your kind of model size on. So yeah, around about 30 vehicles plus some infantry. Yeah,
exactly. And what I said earlier about the core helix, that can be as small as 10 models,
something like that,
and it can be as big as, say, 20.
And there's lots of flexibility, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so what other stuff do we need?
The usual tape measure and dice. Lots and
lots of dice.
This is a big dice rolling game. They have a nice idea with the dice, where you basically there's 3 types of dice. They're all D6. It's a D6 game. But you've got basic dice, which are usually black, and that's used for things like to sort of test or morale and things like that. So it's a straight dice mechanic where you're looking for a number to roll. You've then got a blue dice, which are called heavy dice, which again are used in some combat, and you may have something like 4 and 5 will count as 1 hit, a 6 will count as 2 hits. And then you've got the red dice, which is the exploding dice, which is a fairly standard Spartan mechanic.
This is the thing of 6s explode, which basically means that if you roll a 6, you get to roll another dice.
Yeah, and it's 2 successes.
Yes, so it's 2 successes, and you get to roll another dice as well, and obviously apply whatever whatever the outcome of that is. So, yes, it does mean that potentially you can do an awful lot of damage. Games can be quite fast and bloody, can't they?
It's very fast. It's very bloody. Yeah, I mean, you will be in combat on turn 1. There's no moving around. I mean, the game concept itself it's called Planetfall because it's the initial engagement onto combat. So it's almost like a D-Day. So it's that putting boots on the ground and trying to take objectives before you can land and get your heavy kit off the spaceship. So it's, whilst you've still got some big units in there, they're not as big as some of the units that you would expect. So it is initial land, take ground, clear the enemy way, support the LZ, and then bring in the heavy stuff. So it's that kind of combat. It's very quick. You're literally within firing arcs and firing range on turn one. So use of cover and use of correct tactics for each of the factions is key to the game.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple of other things you may need as well. The game uses some in-game markers, identifying a few effects. They have some specialist markers that they use for marking drop zones, basically, but they're all provided in the game. The other thing you may need are some activation markers. Again, they're provided as counters, but in various different ways you can do it. You can also, and this is optional, you can also use a deck of action cards.
Yeah, the TACs.
Yes.
Tactical activation cards, or as everyone calls them, TAC cards.
TAC cards.
With the tactical activation cards.
Yes. They are optional, they're not required to play the game. Again, that's something you can buy from Spartan, but they are not necessarily required.
Yeah, I mean, basically the templates and trackers and everything else you need, you can get them off PDFs. But they also do a nice little sort of commander set, which has all the tokens in there that you need, plus all sorts of goodies, and a rule book in about £17, £18 something like that, which is a great little resource to have. Yeah,
it is, and you get loads of different bits and pieces. You also get a few buildings. It is worth noting scenery is important in this game.
Yeah, just because of the ranges of fire, you need to break up line of sight.
Yeah. So scenery is important. So in the same way as like in something like Drop Zone Commander, for example, you can end up playing around a lot of buildings or what have you. It's worth having that kind of busy battlefield for Planetfall, for the same reasons. It stops it just becoming a sniping game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the whole premise of the game is that you've just landed on this planet to take an objective. So you're not going to land in a great big green field. You're going to land in the middle of the town or the bunker complex or whatever it is you need to take. So yeah, buildings are key.
Yes. Now, quite interestingly, so let's talk a little bit about models. Obviously, we said we've got 6 factions. Interesting thing about the models is that, first off, the vast majority of them are resin. Okay, there's the odd bit of metal on the kits, but the vast majority of these models are resin. Several of them are actually one-piece resin. They are really nice.
Oh God, they're gorgeous. They really are, and I know I'm sounding very much like a fanboy, but they're fantastic. They're really characterful, and they paint up a treat.
They do. They are one of those models that it's actually quite difficult to make a bad job of them.
Yeah.
Even just doing a basic base coat, wash, highlight will make them look really good. And if you really get to town on them, boy, there are some fantastic paint jobs out there. But even just doing a bog standard paint job that most people can cope with, you can get it. That they produce some really nice results.
Yeah, they are. I've painted a lot
already.
A lot, yeah.
Already. But the interesting thing with that is that with all the models, the bases are provided with all the models. You don't base your own models; they are provided. And one of the reasons behind that is that the bases are all standard sizes because they are part of the model. So you don't measure from model to model; you measure from base to base. Yeah,
which is a nice, quick, easy mechanic.
Yeah, it does mean that you're not suddenly, I mean, there's some games. Excuse me. There are some games where you're measuring from the barrel of a gun to somewhere, or what have you. No, all this basically, the model's in the middle, but you've got a base, so it's all standardised. Works really well.
Yeah, that's the basics.
That's the basics.
Yeah.
So let's bring us on to we've kind of touched on this already. So let's talk a little bit about army creation. So we've got this battle group. So how do we put it together?
Okay, so like I say, your army, it's point driven. You get an order of battle, again, which is free to download, and that describes how that particular force is created and the special rules that you have for it. So for every force, you have, as I said earlier, you have a core helix. You have to have that. There is a minimum and a maximum number of units in that core helix, and it's broken down. So it says, you have mandatory items in each helix, and then you have optional ones, and each of the units has a minimum and maximum size. So, for example, you may have a core helix which has a command unit. That command unit can be one large tank, or it could be a squadron of 2 large tanks. You can also take an attachment, maybe, which can be like a support vehicle, which can be then attached to that unit. So you then got 3 vehicles in that one unit. So that one unit will then move and activate together. So minimum and maximums. Same with the rest of the units that fit into the helixes. It's a very subtle way. It's controlled. So, say for example, you've got a tank unit, maybe like a recon unit. It will say that you can have either 3 or 5 models in that unit. So you can't have 4. You either have 3 or you have 5. And that's because of the victory points that you get when you wipe out the whole unit. So it's controlled that way. It's very clever. It works very well. So that's your core helix. And then around that...
Yeah. Just to explain again, I mean, we've already touched on this, but essentially what you get in the core helix, you get some infantry, you get a light tank unit, you get a medium tank unit, some support, and then your command vehicles. In a game like this, you might think, hang on a second, if you're talking tanks, why have we got infantry and light tanks? Infantry and light tanks are vital because they are the only units that can seize objectives.
Yeah, and seizing objectives is one of the keys parts of the
game.
Indeed,
it's yes, that's part and parcel of the game, is actually seizing and controlling objectives. It's not just a line them up and destroy the other person. There is a lot of the gameplay is about seizing objectives. So having units that can seize objectives is really important, which is why core helixes and extra units of infantry and light tanks is really important for the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your core helix. That's the one you have to have in your battle group.
Yeah.
Then you've got some optional helixes. If you imagine a hexagon, at each facing you've then got another helix which basically slots into that. And the reason that they slot in, and they slot in very particular places, is because of the way that you take these helixes. So there's 6 of them. You have an air helix, heavy armour, assault, recon, the Leviathan strike, and the field support helix. And again, each helix has a minimum, maximum, and mandatory units that have to be in that helix. And each one of the helixes has a particular role to play in the battlefield. Yeah. So again, you take these helixes. Now, so you quite easily, if you want, have a core helix and one of each of the 6 helixes around it, and that's a perfectly valid, nice little battle group.
Yeah.
But you might want to decide to have 2.
Although little, I would, especially get core helix plus 6 helixes. That's not. I suppose in relative terms, that's still relatively few models. Yeah, that will keep you going on a 6x4 table quite happily for a long time.
Oh yes, I mean, that's a big army. But what you can do you can adapt the battle group, and you can take 2 of one of the helixes. So, say for example, I wanted to take 2 recon helixes. Well, I can do that, but what I'd have to do is it nullifies you taking the helix opposite it. So again, if we look at our hexagon, if the recon helix is right at the top, and opposite that is an air helix, if you take 2 recons, you can't take the air helix because you've taken 2. And again, so you can take, for example, if you wanted to, you could take 2 of 3 types of helix, but that means you can't take the other 3.
So you could, so for example, you could take 2 heavy armor helix, but that means you couldn't take a Leviathan. You could take 2 assault helixes, but you couldn't take field support.
Yeah.
So there are these types of helixes which are diametrically opposite each other.
Yeah, and it's a subtle mechanic, but it's very clever. If you two decide, if you want to take 2 heavy helixes, which are heavy helix are pretty much big tank busters. Yeah, you can take those, but you can't take the one opposite it, which might, again, give you tactical issues, because the opposite it might be the Leviathan helix, and Leviathans are the big units. These are the big stompy robots and big troop carriers and huge units. And if you haven't got one of those and your opponent does, you could have a few problems. So it's you need to be careful how you put your armies together. And as always, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. Another way that you can adapt your army or your battle group is by using allies.
Allies, yes, of course.
So there are 2 types of allies. Each of the major races has what are known as natural allies. And a natural ally, you can take one of their helixes and into your army without any issue. So you could, for example, have a directorate core battle group, and their natural ally is the Works Raptor race. So you could take a Works Raptor helix into your battle group without any problem. There's 6 of these allies out there, and if you take one that's not a natural ally, then you lose the option to purchase the opposite helix again.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's a lot easier to describe in a diagram, if I'm being honest with you.
Effectively, if you think, we were talking about this hexagon diagram, and we were saying, well, if you double up on one side, you lose the opposite. Taking an ally means that you automatically, effectively, double up that slot, so you lose the opposite side. Now, as we described earlier, in the Planetfall universe, there are 2 factions fighting each other, each of 3 races. So on one side, you've got the Aquans, the Terrans, and the Ceruleans. And on the other side, you've got the Directorate, the Dindrenzi, and the Ralthorza. And so, like, for example, if you just happen to have a Terran force, I can't think of who's got a Terran force, but if you happen to have a Terran force, you can have Aquan allies, and you can have Cerulean allies, but obviously you can't have Dindrenzi allies because they're the people you're fighting. So that's the way the game is set up. It also means, from a collecting point of view, that if it just so happens that although you're a Terran player, you happen to really, really, really like the Aquan Leviathan, for example, because the Aquan Leviathan is really cool, isn't it, Mike?
It is lovely, yeah.
Yeah. It's a big tripod.
Yes.
Then you can say, right, okay, well, I really like that model. So as a gamer, I really like that model, so I want to play with that model as opposed to the Terran Leviathan, which is a big stompy robot. And so I'll play with the Aquan Leviathan. Great, fine, you can do that. Only problem is then you can't have a heavy armor helix because that's what's diametrically opposite to the Leviathan. helix. But it does give you, as a modeler, a little bit of flexibility to pick and choose some extra models that you want in that you just want to buy, which is not in your core army, if you like. So that's another way that they've done it.
Yeah, and the way they package up the units or package up the products for this game is brilliant, because if you look at the core helix, so we said that there's mandatory units you've got to have, and then there's optional ones, and there's minimums and maximums of all those. But you buy a core helix box. That core helix box gives you the mandatory units that you need, plus a few extra optional ones. If you buy 2 of those boxes, you've got all of the figures you could possibly need for that entire core helix.
Yeah.
And for all of the sub-helixes around it, the six sub-helixes, they've again got helix boxes that you buy, which has everything in there. So you're not messing around trying to work out which blisters. You're not looking at a wall of blisters. You can just pick up a box and go, oh, that's a Terran Recon helix. Thank you very much. I'll buy that. And it's all in there.
It's all in there, and when I say all, that means all. So anything as far as, like, for example, if a unit uses special rules which need templates, or it needs any sort of markers or indicators, they're all included.
Yeah. And
so it's packaged really well.
Yeah, it makes it very easy to buy, which is, in some cases, is a bit of a downside, because it makes it very easy to buy.
You know what we're saying, folks. Wave goodbye to your wallet. And as we said, the models are really nice.
Yeah.
And once you start collecting an army, you kind of go, okay, well, that means I need one of these, I need one of those, I need one of these. And their release schedule is going really well at the moment, and lots of toys are coming out. More we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
But, oh dear, yes, it can, easy, but it very easy to build an army. Could potentially get expensive if you like the game. But having said that, the models actually aren't. When we say it gets expensive, it means because you want to buy a big army. Actually, for the amount of models you get and the quality of models you get, this is not an expensive game.
No, it's not. I mean, we played a 3,000 point game yesterday, which took us about 2.5 hours to play, probably because we were chatting quite a bit. And we had 3 helixes each. So
I was going to say that's about 3 helixes.
Yeah, so I had a big core helix, and then a heavy helix, and then I had a allied recon helix. And there was enough models in there to keep me interested, and it was fun. And like I say, 2.5 hours at a play. Very quick.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite easy to, as a starter game, and this is the sort of level we were playing at when we were playing the game at Spartan. We were playing with a core helix and a heavy helix. And that's about 2,000 points.
Yeah.
And that is a really fun game.
Yeah.
And then on another table, my son was playing with that plus a Leviathan on each side, and that makes it a really fun game. So obviously they were just going with what's currently being released and stuff. And when we were playing at the time, the Leviathans were just coming out. You don't need a huge number of models to play this game. As I say, 3,000 points gives you. It's not like in some games that you'll buy the original box set, and it gives you enough models to get going, but it doesn't really give you a good game.
No, this gives you. I mean, I do a demo of it, and I tend to use just half a core helix, just use a couple of figures, and just show people the mechanics, and just go from there. And it works even at a very small scale.
Yeah. So even the core helix box set, which is about 1,000 to 1,200 points, depending on which army you get. You can play a decent game with that. But obviously, as you increase your model size, it just gives you more things to do, and a bit more mayhem on the table.
Oh yeah, mayhem is good.
Indeed.
Okay.
So, how do we cause this mayhem? Let's get on to how the game actually works, shall we?
Okay, so deployment and setup, I suppose. So it's a typical. You sort of lay out your terrain. They got rules in there if you want to do like a sort of a competition style terrain generation. You basically work out how big a game you want to have. You work out your army, you turn up, you chuck some terrain on the table, and then you set up. The setup rule, well, you can roll for board edge. You have your objectives. So normally you'd have, say, one primary objective and then a number of secondary objectives. And what you do is, once you've put your terrain out, you roll for the edge, you do a thing called a tactical opposed roll, which is 2d6, and you add onto that a modifier depending on the battle group that you've got. And the highest one wins that, and you can decide what to do. So, for example, if you're rolling for board edge, if you win, you can decide which board edge you want. You then place objectives. So again, make another roll. Whoever gets the highest places their primary objective, and that will be, it's normally a building with a marker, and you place that anywhere in your opponent's setups area, which is normally 8 inches in. They're going to become that, I think, with some more scenarios soon, but generally it's 8 inches in from the side. So you basically plonk a building down somewhere with a marker on it, and that's your primary objective.
Yes.
Your opponent does the same, and so he puts one into your setup area, and then you place a number of secondary objectives.
And the number of secondary objectives depends on what points level of game you're playing.
Yeah, normally it's between sort of 1 and 4. And they go, you take turns placing them, and you place them in your opponent's half, but not in their setup area.
If you only place one, you place it in the middle of the table.
Yeah. Or if there's an odd number.
Or if there's an odd number, one has to go right smack bang in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
But other than that, you place you place them.
Yeah.
And then, rather cleverly, you have tertiary objectives. But what's your tertiary objective?
And that would be your opponent's primary objective.
Indeed. So you get points for you get victory points for defending your opponent's the objective that your opponent is trying to get to, which kind of makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Quite clever. So you drop your objectives down, and I would say the only things that can hold objectives, and at the end of each turn, the number of objectives you hold gives you points, which will come up in there. So yeah, the only units that can capture these objectives are your light tanks and your infantry, which are obviously the weakest troops you've got in there. So you need to clear away from them. Because obviously, if you get your recon tanks and send them halfway across the board to go and capture an objective, they're probably going to get blitzed in the first turn. And
obviously, of course, usually objectives are buildings. The only things that can occupy buildings are actually troops. So light tanks can go up against buildings, but they can't actually drive into them. So actually, your light tanks are more exposed, but obviously at the same time they're faster than infantry. Although, having said that, there are different ways of deploying infantry. Infantry can be deployed via drop pod. There's a couple of races that use armoured personnel carriers. There's several different ways of deploying infantry, which means that they're not as vulnerable as you might think. Some infantry are downright horrible. Dindrenzi infantry, for example, are really tough. But so they're not quite as helpless as you might think. But usually, when you have objectives as buildings, the only things that can actually get in the buildings are infantry, which is kind of what you'd expect.
Exactly. So once you've done all that, you deploy your forces, and again you make one of these opposed tactics rolls, and then whoever gets the highest can decide who's going to deploy their first helix, and then basically you take turns. You place an entire helix on the game board, and then goes back to your opponent. They do the same, and back and forth until all the helixes have been dropped onto the table. Once you've done that, you deploy what are known as skydrop sites. So not every race uses these. What they are, they're a way of bringing onto the table off-table troops. So, and that can be, as Neil just said, some infantry. It might be some weapon, some turrets, or some other item. So for example, the Aquans, which I tend to play, they have a lot of these skydrop sites, and they can drop in things like anti-aircraft turrets or big crystals.
The Aquans are big crystals that allow you to shoot round corners.
Yeah, basically, the Aquans can shoot those crystals and then redirect the fire around a corner, which is great. So you have these skydrop sites. We'll go into more detail how they work later on, I think.
And I was saying Dindrenzi have drop pods. I must admit, still one of my favourite kind of pictures, if you like, mental pictures in the game is one of the other things that Dindrenzi can deploy from orbit is their Leviathan, which is this huge stompy robot. So you can imagine that, in a game, all of a sudden, the Dindrenzi player decides to deploy their Leviathan, and he literally drops it into the table. So it's just like, you imagine like this giant stompy robot dropping from orbit and landing as deployed. It's just, it's. I just love that picture of doing that. And I was gutted when my son decided to play Dindrenzi because I wanted to. Never mind. Anyway, so yeah. I mean, anything from drop troops to big stompy robots can deploy from orbit. It's really cool.
Yeah, it gives you a few tactical challenges, shall we say?
Yes, indeed.
So once you've done that, the next step for the pre-game setup is the tactical action cards, which is an optional thing, but you can choose to have a couple of cards. You get them for nothing. They give you the ability, you play them at the start of a turn. Once you play them, they're then discarded, unless you want to buy them back. So they give you a few tweaks and a few more tactical options. And then the final stage is the recon phase. And again, it's a posed tactical test. And then all of your recon troops, which are things like your light tanks, and maybe some flyers. Whoever wins the tactical test moves one of their recon units directly forwards, maximum move. But it can't go within 16 inches of an enemy model at any time. No. So once you move one of yours, your opponent then moves one of his or hers recon, and back and forth until all the recon units have moved. But very careful use of a recon move, especially on a small table. You can literally stop your opponent from moving their recon units.
Yeah, it's very much a case of, it allows you also to potentially seize objectives and at the same time pin your opponent into place on the table. It's one of those things that, if there's a role that you want to win, it's that one.
Yes. Most definitely. Yeah, so that's the basic setup of it. And then we come to the turn sequence. So, turn sequence, you don't play many turns in this game. You normally play about 3 or 4 turns.
Yeah, because by that time everything's dead. Like we said, it's fast and bloody, this game.
Oh, God, right. Yeah, so pre-turn sequence is, you wish, if you wanted to use one of your tactical action cards, you can do that. So you place a single card face down on the table in front of them, in front of you, and that card then takes effect during the turn. Some cards might affect your entire army, some might just affect a single unit, but it has to be used in that turn, and at the end of the turn, it's discarded. and you only get a handful of them. You then can have late arrivals. So in some scenarios, you might have sort of flanking forces or reserves turn up. So you basically make the rolls for those, and they come on, either on a table edge or some other way. And then you do your initiative, which again is the 2d6 opposed tactics roll with your bonus, and whoever gets the highest decides who's going to go first in the turn.
So, and at that point, we're looking at a turn sequence, which is basically alternate unit activation,
yes,
but with a slight twist.
It is, yeah. Well, the twist is that you have to activate by helixes. So at the beginning of your turn, you choose one of your helixes, you choose a unit in that helix, you activate it, and you do movement, combat, firing, whatever else, and then you pass it over to your opponent. They choose a helix, choose a unit, and do the same, and it comes back to you, but you have to stay in the helix that you've chosen. So you have to activate all the units in one of your helixes before you can move on to one of the other helixes. And all the units in the helix, they have a command radius, or your command units in each helix has a command radius. Now you can move out of that, but it's going to make you vulnerable to disorder. So you kind of want to keep your helixes together. And if you start the turn and say, right, I'm going to activate this heavy helix, which is on the flank, great, and you rotate your battle plan, you activate a unit, and then your opponent goes and activates a helix which might be on the other flank and starts moving a recon unit around your flank, you're buggered, because you can't get, you either carry on with your battle plan, knowing that eventually you're going to, be able to face him, or you either say, okay, I'm going to not activate any more units in this helix. I'm going to go and react to you, moving on the other flank. Which is it's nice. It works really well, and it gives you a really good tactical choice. And I know I say tactical quite a lot, but it really does make you think. Especially when you got 3 or 4 different helixes, it's where to start.
Of course, at the same time, your opponent is having the same choice.
Yes.
Do I react to what my opponent is doing, or do I stick with my own battle plan? So again, initiative is important, and because you roll for initiative on each turn, don't you?
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So at the end of each turn, initiative for the following turn may well change. But as you say, in this game, you don't tend to get that many turns, because as we've already said, you end up in combat fairly quickly.
Oh, you do, yeah. And the other thing you can do when it comes to initiative, there's these things called logistic points, which you can buy as part of your army, and they cost like 25 points each. But say you make the initiative roll and you lose it, what you can do is you can turn out your opponent and go, right, I'm going to bid. I'm going to bid to win. And what you do is you make a secret bid up to, it depends on the army, but it's usually between sort of 4 or 5 you can bid up to. But you bid your logistic points against your opponent. And whoever bids the most loses those loses those logistic points, but gets the initiative. So if there's a time when you really want to get the initiative and you really want to make that first initial move or the first initial attack, you can do that using logistic points, but you got to pay for them. Which again is another little tweak.
Yeah.
So once you've done that, we get into the whole sort of activation phase.
Yeah. Now it's not now with this game. When you activate a squadron, you do everything with that squadron before your opponent activates. So you move, you fighting close quarters combat, and then you fire. And all that happens before your opponent does anything else. Okay, so it's not I move, you move, and then we'll all have melee, and then we'll all fire. You do everything with one unit.
Yeah, and it's very fluid. And as you say, the segments it's movement, close quarters, and then firing. So, and each of those segments has got various steps in there.
Yeah, it is worth noting at this stage that the rules are very well laid out. They're very methodical, so it just takes you straight through this. So it is actually pretty easy to follow, and so it's actually quite straightforward to learn the game.
It is, yeah. I picked it up quite easily, which is a novelty for me. So, do you want to do movement?
Well, yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, so you've activated your squadron, and you make a move. There's various different types of moves that you can do, but essentially, on each type of unit has a bunch of stats, as you'd expect. Part of the stats is 2 movement amounts. One of them is a cruise movement, and the other one is what's called flat out. So you decide which type of movement you want to take. Obviously, if you're moving flat out, you're limited. You can go farther, but you're limited on sort of number of turns you can make. Whereas if you're doing a cruise move, generally you can pretty much move in any direction and change your facing quite quickly as well. So you basically move. Units or squadrons have a unit coherency of about 2 inches normally. It's a bit more if you're flying. Once you've moved, if your opponent's got any units on Overwatch, which is one of the activation states, they can fire at you once you've moved. But once you've done that, you do your consolidation. So there are some special rules. Some units are what are called lumbering, and they use a little template to actually do their turn. So they can only turn 45 degrees at a time. Things like
big Terran tanks, because Terrans, for example, you tend to use big track vehicles, so their big tanks are called lumbering, whereas other races use hover tanks and hover technology, so they can use their big tanks, but they can move a bit more freely because they're hovering as opposed to being ground based. Yeah, exactly. So movement is quite free flow, so you basically move to where you want to go, and generally you can change your face into whichever way you want to be fired, or whichever way you want to be punching. Because obviously some weapons have different arcs of fire and so forth. And also where you're facing can affect where you're being shot from, if that makes sense. So you don't want to show your flanks, shall we say, because that's bad. After movement is close quarters battle. CQB, which is a term that you may or may not be familiar with. Some games use it a lot. If you're not, it's melee. But, same thing. Yeah, melee range is 4 inches. So as soon as you get within 4 inches of an enemy, you can carry out a close combat with them. I think we'll do the firing mechanism first, and then we'll come back to close combat. Indeed. Yeah. Okay. But you nominate your target, you do your battle, or you do your resolution of the battle, and then you do your consolidation afterwards. And then, if you're still alive, you can then fire your main ordnance. And again, you declare your attacks, you resolve the fire, and then you consolidate afterwards. And then once you've done that, that unit is completely activated. It moves over to your opponent, they choose, and away they go. And you keep doing that until you've activated all of your units. And once everybody's activated all the units, you get into the end phase. And the end phase is you do any compulsory actions, any disordered hit point losses. You score your objectives. So once you finish the turn, if you've got units holding objectives that are unopposed, you then get points. And it's worth for this point going into the points system. Because you have this points tracker, which starts off at a certain number, which is usually
100 of your army points that you spent.
So the whole point is it's based on the size of your army. Okay,
Yeah.
So as I say, it's 100. It's a ratio.
Yeah. So say you've got a 2,000 point army, you'd have your tracker will be set to 20, and then what you do is you score your objective. So for holding your tertiary objective, you get say 1 point. For holding a secondary objective, you get 2 points, and for holding a primary objective of your enemy, you might get 3 or 4 points. And the number of points per objective depends on the size of the army. So the bigger the armies, the more points these objectives are worth. And basically, what you do is you reduce your tracker by that number of points.
Yes, and the other way you obviously reduce that tracker is by destroying enemy units. Now, that's not destroying partials of enemy units, it's destroying
The entire unit.
the entire squadron.
Yeah, squadron, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and each squadron has a victory points value that it's worth. And again, these are it depends on their size, but it gives a victory point value. So if you destroy a squadron, then you get the victory points for it. But you have to destroy the entire squadron. Okay, it's no good destroying 2 out of 3 tanks or 4 out of 5 light tanks. You've got to destroy the entire squadron. So one of the things is, from a defensive point of view, is if your squadron's getting beaten up, you have a choice to make. You can either keep it in the fight and make every shot count until it dies, or you can start backing off, trying to back off with that unit to basically meaning that your opponent does not then get the victory points for destroying the squadron.
Exactly. And the idea of the game is to get your victory point tracker down to 0. So it's a race to 0. Without wasting your there. So you score your objectives, then you can repair damage. So some weapon effects are what is called as debilitating, and you can repair those. And then you remove all the markers that have been put down, get rid of the game cards that have expired, and you start another turn. Simples
indeed. So really, it's worth talking in a little bit more detail, especially about the way combat works. Movement is simply measured in inches. Okay. Movement is really, from what we've explained, it's really, really simple. There are no particularly complicated rules about movement arcs, and unless you are a lumbering vehicle. So, to be honest, you can zip around the battlefield pretty much to your heart's content with an awful lot of the vehicles.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, as you would expect, there's rules on there for embarking or occupying buildings or disembarking from vehicles and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so now we said it's probably worth describing firing before we describe close quarters battle, because they use similar sort of mechanics, but the firing is slightly easier.
It is.
So we'll go to firing first. Now, obviously, we've been describing the weapons of the units of stats, and obviously, along with that, weapons have stats. Weapons have abilities, and these are reflected primarily in the type and number of dice that you roll.
Yes. So everything's D6. So what you do with your squadron, you determine who you want to shoot at. So squadrons always shoot at other squadrons. First thing you do is you determine who's going to shoot at who. You then work out the range, and again, you measure from base edge to base edge, straight line.
Yeah, and it's always closest model in unit to closest model in unit.
Yeah. Then there's a stage called mutual agreements, which sounds interesting. But basically what it is you agree which models can participate in the attack, depending on line of sight. So it's not a case of if one model in the unit can see the enemy and 2 hiding men in the building that everybody could fire, you need to be able to draw line of sight from every unit or every model in that squadron. So you decide how many have got line of sight to the enemy. You decide if any of the enemy units are not viable targets because they might be hidden behind other units or behind buildings. You agree the order of viable targets, the target priority. So basically what that means is the units or the models that are closest to the enemy are the ones that take damage first. And then you agree on sort of flank and aft bonuses. So again, it sounds tricky, but it's not. It literally is a case of, well, I've got 4 tanks, but only 3 of mine can see your unit. And I can only see 2 of your units, and that one's closest, so that's going to take damage first, and then that one. And I'm shooting from the side. It's as simple as that. It's common sense.
It is, but it's just articulating that with your opponent and just kind of saying, okay, well, this is what I think. Do you agree?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is simply just an articulation of what you can see and what you're going to fire at. It's not complicated.
No. And line of sight is literally any point on your base to any point on the enemy's base.
Yeah. So you can't turn around and say, well, you can't shoot at me because you can only see the point of the gun, or what have you. Basically, if you've got a line of sight to a base, you can fire. You could that vehicle is in line of sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So once you've done that, it's the compiling your attack dice. Which basically is you look at the stats for that particular unit. Each weapon has an effective range and a long range, and next to that it'll have the distance for that particular range bracket and the number of attack dice that you generate.
Obviously, as you said before, these attack dice can be in one of 3 different colours. Generally for vehicles, the majority of them tend to be red, but some weapons tend to be less effective than others.
Yeah. To be honest with you, most time it's red.
Yeah.
So you work out the weapons you're going to fire and the ranges and so forth. And again, if you're in a situation where some of your unit is at long range, some of them is at effective range, you basically make a decision on the number of figures you want to shoot. So you've got a lot of leeway in how you carry out the attack. You're not forced, for example, say we've got 4 units firing, and 2 of them are within effective range, and 2 of them are slightly behind and they're in long range. Well, you don't have to turn around and go, well, I'm firing at all 4, so all 4 of them have to fire at long range. You can just turn around and go, actually, mathematically, it's better than just to fire the ones at the front. And you can just choose to fire the 2.
Yeah.
So when you have the situation where targets exist at both long and effective range, you need to decide what weapons are firing at what range. And that then gives you a certain number of dice. So if a unit's got a weapon that fires up to 16 inches with 5 dice, and there's 4 of those units, you've got 20 dice. So, work out your dice number, you roll your attacks, and generally, you need a 4, 5, or 6 to score a hit. So, on a red dice, the 4 and a 5 will equate to 1 hit, the 6 will equate to 2 hits, and it explodes.
So you're rolling the dice?
Yeah. So you roll the dice, you roll the exploding dice, and then you work out the number of hits that you've caused, and then you allocate damage.
Yeah. Of course, these exploding dice can carry on, so you can roll exploding dice, then roll exploding dice up the exploding dice, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, you can potentially cause an awful lot of damage.
Yeah. And again, this is where it comes... Again, this is going to sound quite clunky, but again, it's really, really quick. So you basically work out, roll the dice, and say, right, I've scored, I've rolled my 20 dice, and I've managed to get 15 hits against the opponent. each unit or each model has what's called a defense rating. For small units, that might just be a single number. Might be, say, for example, 5. So if I've rolled 15 hits and their DR is 5, that basically means that I've effectively caused a damage point on each one of those units, because that unit has 1 damage point, which takes 5 hits to take off.
Yeah.
Right? Bigger units have got multiple damage points. So, for example, a medium-sized tank has 2 damage points, and say the first one might take 7 hits to affect it. The second one might only take 5 hits. So, in our example, I've rolled 15 hits. I've done 7 hits for the first one, so that's enough to do 1 damage point. I've done 5 hits, which takes the second damage point, and I have effectively, so that's 12, so I've got 3 left over. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Each damage point that you do against an enemy, the enemy gets to make a shield save if they've got shields. So
yeah, it's worth pointing out some races have shields, some have tougher armor, so they're more difficult to kill.
Yeah. So the shields save. So say I've shot somebody and he's got 2 shields. I've done 2 damage points. He's got 2 shield points. So that means it's allowed to make 4 rolls, or basically it makes 4 shield rolls, because your shield rating is used for each damage point that you've taken. So basically, I've scored 2 damage points and I got 3 dice left over, and then Neil's going to roll his 4 saves. So he rolls his 4 saves. If he, again, you're looking for 4, 5, or 6, and it is exploding again. So he rolls. So say he got really, really lucky, and he's managed to save 6 hits. Well, you take away the 3 which are spare. You then take 3 off the second damage point, which means that you haven't done enough damage to score that second damage point. So you've only effectively scored 1 damage point against that unit. And then you basically put the counter on to say he's taking the damage point, and you're all done. Oh, you've done disorder markers, disorder tests. If you take any damage, you have to make a disorder test, which is normally 3 dice, and you're looking to roll a 4, 5, or 6 success, and you're looking to score equal to or more than the number of damage points you've just taken. That sounds really, really clunky, but trust me, it's really, really quick.
It is. And one thing worth noting is that between attacks, damage points, not damage points, but the number of damage you need to score a damage point isn't kind of accumulative. So, if someone said, well, I've got 1 full damage point and I've scored 3 extra hits towards the second damage point, once that combat is over, then that is basically lost. So that, the next combat, it starts again from scratch.
Yeah. So yeah. It is a buckets of dice game.
Yeah, very much so.
But it works really well, and it is quick. I mean, I know it's trying to explain it sounds quite clunky, but it's not. It just works. You sort of know. You look at I've scored 15 hits. Was that 7-5? Okay, that's 2 damage points. Make 2 save rolls. Okay, take those off. Bang, and it's done.
It is one of those games. I mean, when we played it, it's like, okay, for the first turn, you're going through everything. By the second turn, you're kind of going, right, okay, right, I think I know what I'm doing. Can I just check this? Can I just check that? By the third turn of the game, it's coming naturally.
Yeah,
it really is. It really is a simple. I mean, we talk about simple and elegant mechanics. These are, simple to learn. They all, an awful lot of the stuff follows the same principles. So once you know, okay, well, this is the way this works. It's the way it works throughout the game. So it's easy to use, easy to memorise.
Yeah, it is. Really, really quick. And close combat is a very similar mechanism. The only difference really is it's done at 4 inches. You combine all the attacks from all the models in the close combat, and simultaneously you basically do the rolls to hits, do the damage. You don't have any shields though when it comes to close combat, so it's very quick and very bloody.
Close combat is it was that math. It's close combat is brutal.
Yes.
It really is brutal, and some races have very, very good close combat abilities. Dindrenzi infantry, for example, are probably about the best in the game. I mean, obviously, it's balanced from the fact that you don't get an awful lot of them, but I've seen them take down a Leviathan in close combat. Close combat isn't. It's not just an afterthought, especially when you're doing assaults. It's nasty, but it's well thought out. For example, as the other things about, like for example, you can use assault vehicles. Or certain races, like the Directorate and the Terrans, for example, use assault vehicles. So basically, you have like these big armored personnel carriers that you can battle wagons that can transport troops around the table. They can then move into close combat, have a round of close combat, and then dispatch their troops into assault. Meaning that effectively you fight 2 rounds of close quarter battle immediately. So, okay, different tactic, but very brutal. But clever, really, really well done, really well thought out.
Yeah, it just works. You've also got rules in there for doing storming engagement, which is when you've got infantry attacking infantry inside a building. So it's a similar thing, but you can, if you win the combat, you can push the defender out of the building. It's a slightly different mechanic because in this case, you move up to the building. The defender gets to attack first in close combat, and then any attackers who are left attack in afterwards. And then you work out who basically did the most number of hits, and the loser retreats away. So again,
yeah. Now, we said earlier we were going to talk about sky drops and various other bits and pieces like that. It's worth just talking about those. We know we talked about, well, there are sky drops which can be used for deployment of troops. There's also things that can be used for effectively orbital bombardment. There are certain units that effectively can call in orbital bombardments. They can be used in the game. What you can use, for example, several units. I mean, there are even support units on their own, which are effectively essentially large target designators. So they can be used with these sky drop markers to make targeting more accurate. Essentially, what happens is that when sky drop markers are deployed, they have a deviation dice in the middle of them, and this is the number of d6 it deviates off that target area. You can then activate units to essentially you're highlighting whether it's laser designation or what have you, but you're highlighting the drop area, which then reduces the scatter. So the dice on the sky drop marker is reduced, and down to the point where you can have a minimum of 1d6 deviation.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the number of inches, and then those markers can be used depending on your army. They can be used for deployment of troops. As I said, some troops use sky pods or drop pods. Sorry. I've already mentioned that the Dindrenzi can actually drop a Leviathan there, or orbital bombardment. And again, orbital bombardment, the name says it all, it can be quite nasty. the whole point throughout combat of this is that it's meant to be fun, but it's meant to be quick. So, as I say, units don't tend to hang around very often once you get into combat. You're into combat usually turn 1, turn 2 at the absolute latest. It's a quick, brutal, fun game.
It is. The mechanics are nice and simple. It's got a lot of depth to it. There's lots of nice little special rules, but there's not millions of them. And they're called MARS. They're model assigned rules. But they give a little flavour, So, like you say, you've got your sky drop markers that you can use, the Aquans can bring in these crystals which lasers can shoot through around corners. I think that you've got your artillery. There's also portals. So some troops, you can use the sky drop marker to place a portal on the table that infantry can basically teleport out of, and then go into combat. So there's all little tweaks and things like that, and you've got aircraft in them as well. But these are low-flying aircraft. You think of them like an A-10, like American A-10 on a battle run.
Yeah.
So these are not aircraft 20,000 feet up in the air doing carpet bombing. These are your low-level attack aircraft, which are vulnerable. You can do close quarters battle against planes as well, or aircraft. There's lots of nice little rules in there.
Yeah. I mean, you say close quarter battle. Yeah, I mean, for example, we talked about giant stompy robots. Yes, you can have a King Kong thing of like aircraft buzzing around a giant robot, and the giant robot can engage an aircraft and essentially knock it out of the sky. So it's that sort of level as far as aircraft are concerned. So it really is close support.
Yeah.
Each army has its own little bits of special rules, its own special units. So there's an awful lot of, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, rock, paper, scissors going on between different, balancing acts between different armies. I play Terrans, for example, so they have support units that use a lot of shield technology. We also have a lot of anti-aircraft support units, and then obviously, that's alongside your main battle tanks. So there's lots of mutual support units involved as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
Each army works in a slightly different way. It's just the sort of thing you'd expect.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing we haven't talked about is disorder.
Right, okay.
I think I mentioned it very briefly in combat. So basically, you take disorder test whenever you take any damage, and it's a standard 3d6. You need 4, 5, or 6 to score success. You need to score more than a number of damage markers you've just taken in that combat. If you're within combat range of your commander, you get an extra dice. If you're elite, you get an extra dice. If you're militia, you -1 dice. And you basically work at the number of dice you have to roll, and basically roll them. If you don't roll enough, you take a disorder marker. And what happens in the end phase, all disorder markers get transferred to be hits. So there's chances that at the end of the turn, you can start losing squadrons quite quickly if you're taking enough disorder markers.
Yeah. It's not good.
No.
It's one of those things of get rid of your disorder markers if you can.
Oh yeah. Well, unfortunately, you can't get rid of them. There are some weapons that will cause what are called debilitating attacks. Also, you've also got like cyber warfare, which you can use, or cyber attacks. They can cause sort of short-term effects, which you can try and repair off in the end phase. But they tend to do things like lowering your defense rating, which is the number of hits that you have to take before you take a damage point.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying disorder points you can't get rid of. So you end up in a situation where you're looking at units and saying, well, I know that these guys are, basically they're out of the battle at the end of the turn. And there's actually a special rule that covers that, which basically means that these guys then kind of sell themselves dearly because they know that
the end is nigh.
The end is nigh, indeed.
Let's go out in a blaze of glory.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I think that about covers the rules, doesn't it, mate?
Yeah, it is. Scenarios. There's not many scenarios in the rules. No. And there's not a campaign system in there either. But I think
that is to my mind the one downside of it at the moment. I know they've talked about a lot about we're going to be doing campaign packs and various other bits and pieces, and let's face it, at the same time, although you can buy these rules out, they are actually free to download.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think before we go in too far into the sort of the recap, it might be a good idea to grab Mr. Whitaker and get his thoughts on all of this.
Indeed, but it will be. But to just say, scenarios wise, basically, it's they want that many in there. Campaign system, not yet, and yes, as opposed to army lists. Obviously, we've talked about because that's part of the army creation. So yeah, what we'll do, we'll take another break. And then when we come back, we'll be joined by Mr. Whitaker, and we'll talk a lot more about what we like about Planetfall, maybe what we don't like, and then go from there, and then wrap the show up.
Yeah.
So that was a review of Planetfall, and as we said, we're now being joined by Mr. Whitaker, who couldn't join us for the review.
There.
Good evening, sir.
How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you doing?
Oh, not so bad.
Nice for you to join us. I don't know, late as ever. God.
Yeah, I can't help it. Been busy.
Yeah, but it's about 10 days late.
What can I say?
Oh, sorry, I forgot this is radio. 10 minutes late.
Something like that.
Yeah.
10 minutes late. Yes, the wonders of podcasting. Yes, 10 days and 2 minutes later. So then, Mr. Whitaker, before we all start chatting about Planetfall, what have you been up to recently?
Recovering from Salute, and then doing it all again.
Oh yeah, because you're a prize winner, aren't you?
Yeah, we got the Most Innovative Game Award, for which the credit actually has to go to Andy Miller from our club, who is the guy who turns our warped imaginings into physical reality, I think would be the best description.
Oh, so he's really the guy to blame for the gnomes, is what you're telling me?
No, that was actually Graham. He's the guy to blame for the 6-foot model of the Myrna Dam and the mock-up Lancaster cockpit. Which you may have noticed has the dam has a nice little pull-out piece that simulates the dam busting and flooding.
Yes.
But we then did it all again at campaign at Milton Keynes for 2 days, in which I walked another 10 miles.
Yes. Now, for those people that don't know, campaign is held in Milton Keynes, in the middle of a shopping centre. Yeah,
it's the centre.mk, which is right in the middle of Milton Keynes. And there's an area called Middleton Hall, which is basically, it's pretty much the size of it's a reasonable sized place to hold a war game show, basically. Yeah. But it's got John Lewis, Pret-a-Manger, and Costa and Nets all round it.
Yes, yeah, it's just a big concourse and stuff, isn't it? And
yeah, it is. So it's open to the general public. It's completely free. So perhaps understandably, our game went down really well.
Oh, it'd be great. Imagine all those Napoleonic plays. Get off my figures. All these sticky 9-year-old fingers everywhere.
Yeah. Oh. But, yeah, it went well. We even managed to get the tablet talking to the Lancaster, which it wasn't doing at Salute.
I'm sorry?
Right. The Lancaster had to indicate damage, which is why it was mounted on a somewhat weird stand with cables.
Oh, that was why. That's why it was mounted. It was mounted on that industrial engineering stand.
Yes, with what was actually an Arduino blue tack to the base, which was supposed to talk to the tablet so you could turn the lights on and off, and for some reason didn't work at Salute, but we got it working for campaign. So.
Oh right, so it was a Lancaster with added blinky lights.
It's the world's only Lancaster with a USB socket.
Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's a good question, isn't it? But yeah, we had a whale of a time. Everybody seemed to love it. Hopefully, it'll be at the other parties. And if you still missed it, we'll talk to them when they're finished with Partisan 1. It'll be at our show.
Okay, well, okay. So other Partisan, which is the September Partisan, not the one that's going to be in 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, so it'll be at our show in November. It'll be at the Festival of the 40s in Peterborough in July. And I think we'll then put it to bed until the 75th of the anniversary of the Dambusters in 2018, at which point it'll probably come out again, because I suspect it'll probably do quite well.
Tell you what, it'd be great to Partisan. It'd be really atmospheric because it's so dark in there. It'll almost be like a night one.
We did consider... we did consider a couple of things that the actual Dambusters did for night flying training, in that they put an amber screen in the cockpit and gave the pilots blue goggles, which meant they could fly at daytime and it looked like flying at night. We did consider having the mock-up Lancaster cockpit actually have an orange screen and giving the players flying goggles. We couldn't find any blue flying goggles.
It's odd, that. Must be a limited market.
But we think we've cracked it for next time.
I don't want to know where you got them from.
Somewhere on eBay.
Yeah.
All things turn up somewhere on eBay. So yeah, that's been recovering from that's been the main focus. And then I had a slight accident with a Dice Shop online sale, and I appear to have bought quite a bit of Sales of Glory.
Hang on. So this is the virtual loose shelving.
Virtual loose shelving is a killer.
I mean, we've got enough to contend with every time Mike wanders into Firestorm, somebody in Firestorm kicks a shelf when he walks past it and he ends up buying stuff that randomly falls off his safe and crashing to the floor. Now you're telling me...
I was wondering what you were going on about.
Yeah.
Well, this
is the podcast. These are funny.
Dice Shop Online were shifting the box set for about a tenner off, and the ship's at about half price.
Oh,
and
right,
since I didn't succumb to the Kickstarter, and I was going to.
I must admit, I looked at the Kickstarter and I thought, fantastic, that looks really good. Until I saw the postage cost and went,
maybe not. Yeah. Yeah, the Kickstarter hasn't had the best of reputations, but I think everything for the Kickstarter is now actually out. Their model of HMS Victory made it out last month, which looks really, really pretty. So, I don't know, but obviously Dice Shop decided that they were clearing stock, so I had a bit of a splurge. This was then compounded by finding someone else flogging off an awful lot of ships on eBay for next to nothing. So I now have a really quite large Napoleonic Navy in 1/1000th scale. And it's all painted, so it doesn't count.
It's a board game.
It's a board game. It doesn't count.
And it's all painted, so it doesn't count.
What do you mean it's all painted so it doesn't count?
It's pre-paints. It's like Wings of Glory. They're all painted.
Yeah, but I don't ever remember a rule that says pre-paints don't count. You just happen to make these up as you go along.
Yep.
Mr.
Hobbs will back me.
Yeah, I'm right behind you.
See?
Dude. I say, looking at a great big pile of Star Wars Armada that's just turned up.
So yeah, I introduced Club last week.
I'm sorry.
Wait. What was that, Hobbs?
Are you trying to tell me that you just bought Wave 1?
I didn't buy it, but I have it.
You didn't buy it, but you have it.
I suppose the fact that you didn't buy it means it doesn't count either.
If we're going to split hairs, it's a pre-paint. and it's a board game.
Hang on. You didn't buy it. Hang on. And you didn't buy it. When's your birthday?
I did. Let's just say my soul is now in a glass bottle on Lord S's shelf.
Oh, okay.
Hang on, wasn't it already?
Well, yeah, it's even more so now.
Oh, right, okay, just checking.
Hang on a
He's
second.
now sealed the bottle.
Hang on a second. I mean, this is beginning to sound a bit. This is beginning to sound a bit like. Harry Potter.
And I ate him.
We've just had this discussion about you selling your soul to Spartan. You just invented the wargaming Horcrux, haven't you?
I've sold many souls. When I
Not all of them is.
Yes. Oh, by the way, Neil, we need to talk.
Is it something you're not telling me?
Yes.
We'll find out.
Yes.
Yeah. Come to Rapture. Don't be too disappointed if you don't go.
Yeah. And in case you're wondering why Rick hasn't been on the show for so long, it's something to do with another jar in another shelf somewhere.
Yes. What I say was a little mix-up. I asked Down to get me one each of the fighters for Wave 1. And then he phoned me up and said, what do you want for Wave 1? I said, one of each. And so he sent me
One of each.
Yeah, one of each of everything.
Oh, dear Lord.
And I tried to pay him, but he went, no, it's okay. For all the work that you're going to do for the Grand Melee.
I own you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, for all the work you're going to do for the... That's... I think, Grand Melee, that's going to be a derby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they just started advertising that, haven't they?
Mm. Yes, they have.
Song of Grand Melee at derby.
Yep.
So, Mr. Hobbs, so what you're claiming is Wave 1 was a complete accident. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah, and I completely failed on my sneaking it in through the house because I was actually 300 miles away when it arrived, and my missus took this great big box mark, present from Gripping Beast.
Oops.
At least it was present from Gripping Beast as opposed to this is the invoice for.
It's all right for you. I had to explain away 18 feet of blue lino.
What, and your wife didn't dismiss it just with a shake of the head?
It's not the kind of thing one normally buys for to cover war games tables, except when one was doing a very large lake.
At least now you can redecorate your bathrooms.
Or something like that, yeah.
Right, so we digressed. So, Sales of Glory.
Yeah.
So I suppose at this point you'll want us to do a show about it at some point.
Love to.
In that case, then we'll have to. We'll just have to add it to the list. I mean, I do seem to remember that I did have a couple of emails to say, "Oh, have you seen Sales of Glory and what did you think about it?" So I'm sure there'll be at least one or two listeners out there who may be pleased that we're going to be talking about it.
The short review, I really like it. The longer review, coming to a podcast near you.
Yeah, that's spoiler alert. Oh, dearie me. Right, okay.
No, that just means it's definitely on the list.
We don't just review things we like.
Very true. Yeah. I do have to be a bit careful at times.
I don't. Everything we review is, well, everything that I'm involved in is stuff I've usually bought and like. Otherwise, I really can't be asked reviewing it.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's definitely getting cut.
Yeah. Yes.
We have a reputation for impartiality to maintain.
Do we?
Well, he does.
Well, allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
You purchased Sales of Glory.
Well, I got mugged by a passing eBay auction as well, which didn't help.
I don't know, just all this deference to say it wasn't, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Just come on, guys, just take responsibility here.
All right, I splashed.
Right. Okay, so what else? Have you doing anything else? Or I mean,
Isn't that enough?
I was going to say. Yeah. Right. Okay. So
No, that's it for now.
So lots of goodness, lots of extra gaming goodness to talk about in the non-too distant future. But that's a complete digression for what we've actually got you on the show to talk about, which is obviously what we just reviewed, which is Planetfall. Now, I understand that other than Mr. Hobbs selling his soul to Spartan and being a Vanguard, you've also got a Vanguard in the Peterborough Club, haven't you?
Yeah, we have AD who's a happy consumer of all that is Spartan, as far as I can tell. He has loads of dystopian wars, loads of Uncharted Seas, loads of Planetfall, and he's quite happy to put on games for anybody and everybody he wants, which is actually very nice, because it meant I got to get my head around a little bit of Planetfall without actually having to spend any money, because I've spent it all on Sales of Glory.
Yes.
It may only be a matter of time. Anyway, okay, right. So we've all played. Planetfall to a greater or lesser extent. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of just have a chat about what we like about it, maybe what we don't like about it. So as well as doing a review, actually kind of let's give people a bit of an idea of it. As far as what we think. I didn't want to like it because I decided that if I was going to play one 10 mil sci-fi game, it was probably going to be Drop Zone Commander. Although, having said that, Drop Zone Commander is nice, but there's I think as I can't remember if we've actually discussed this on air, but I know there's a few things that me and Mike kind of think. Well, it's nice, but there's a couple of things we don't like about it. The last thing I needed was to like another 10 mil sci-fi game.
But did you like it? You did beat me.
I did beat you, yeah. We didn't actually get to play play against each other. Yeah, and to be fair, I like it a lot better than Drop Zone Commander. In some ways, it's I think the bottom line is it's a buckets of dice. It's a short bloody buckets of dice game, isn't it? I mean,
very definitely short and bloody, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we said during the review, it's one of those games that if you're not in combat by the end of turn one, somebody's doing something wrong somewhere. Or you're being massively cautious.
Or you have a table that is more densely covered than I think the designers expect. I mean, we did find one of the things that Adi reckoned from having played it a couple of times, and I'm talking to him about it, was that one of the ways of getting a longer game and a game with better cover and some of the big single units where your army list says you can have one of or two of, but the core box only comes with one of, buying a core set each and putting them together gets you some much less fragile big units and a lot more scenery, and it does make for a very interesting game with a bigger amount of cover on the table.
Yeah, from the games I've played, you need about 50% cover.
Yeah,
you need to put down the firing arcs and lanes. Having two core boxes is definitely the way that we do, because that gives you enough to give you. It gives you all the units you need for a full helix.
And I do like there's a wrinkle in the system with the way units combat factors work when you add more figures to them that I quite like.
Yeah, and also of course the big thing is that up until they've just released the infantry expansions. The core units are one of the only ways that you get units that can seize objectives on the table. And the more units that can seize objectives you have, the better. Because despite all the victory points you get for blowing things up, actually seizing objectives is surefire victory points.
Yeah, you definitely need to have a recon helix, because that's going to give you, again, units that can capture. And also the Leviathan helixes, they usually come with recon units as well.
Yeah, the Leviathan helixes normally come with a couple of units of light tanks, don't they?
Yeah.
And if you remember from the review, the two things that can seize objectives are infantry and light tanks. So actually, it's actually quite nice that excuse me guys, but you need infantry, and infantry is actually useful, despite the fact that it's potentially quite fragile. Make sure you stick it in a building fairly quick.
Yeah.
Or cover or support it. There's a dangerous thought.
Yeah, but some infantry, I mean, like Dindrenzi infantry, for example, is actually really nasty.
But I mean, combined armed tactics, who knew?
Yeah. It is surprisingly tactical, for a big bucket of dice game.
Yeah,
it makes you think, especially when
the things that struck me about it is it is very, very quick and very bloody. And the other one is, dear God, it's pretty.
Yeah,
I mean, those are some lovely, lovely, lovely models.
They are so well sculpted.
But then that does appear to be rapidly becoming one of Spartan's key shticks, as it were, in that they're starting to do really, really pretty models.
And to the extent that, you can really go to town on them if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But even with just a basic paint job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at
they can come up amazingly well.
I mean, looking at some of the tanks in the rulebook that are basically just a black wash and a dry brushed highlight on the edges, and a few little bits of detail picked out, and somebody's actually, whoever paints for them has quite a nice little graph of painting glow effects. But they look like they weren't much effort to paint, and they are really nice.
Yeah, I painted 3 big armies in very quick succession. I got the Terrans, the old-fashioned Terrans.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes, I forgot. You got the original metal ones, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, which I've done as it was a mixture of Terran and Dindrenzi tanks. So I basically scoped them out to be like a separatist force.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some sort of mixture of the 2 tanks and infantry and stuff. They'll all be painted up the same. So I'm just good little campaign using them. So, but they just. I mean, I've started doing some of the Firestorm Armada ships as well, and they painted a treat as well.
I bet they do. The other thing that is actually remarkably effective, considering it's effectively cardboard and bits of linking plastic, the scenery that comes in the core box.
Yeah, it works really well.
It works really well.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks a little teensy bit cardboard, but nothing you can't fix. And it works really. It looks really effective. It looks really good in sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, as the game goes, I think the only thing that's really missing is more scenarios. Because you've only really got the one sort of. Well, it's like a generic game setup, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is a campaign system in the starter set.
But that's really more. That is really much more a case of just that's just a way of introducing you to various different units one bit at a time, isn't it?
Yes, that's what it is. So that I think it would be nice to see. It's a lot more scenarios. I think they're talking about doing linked campaigns anyway. So I think that'll come. That's the only thing that's missing. But
I have one real gripe, and I don't think it's limited to Planetfall. In fact, it seems to be a lot of the recent sci-fi games. And this is going to sound a bit odd until I explain it, but it's a bit what my old gaming group used to call Sword with a Man. Because way back when, one of our players had a character who had an intelligent sword who was smarter than he was. And thus, effectively, the sword played the man. And there's a bit of feel with quite a lot of these factions that they're defined by their special technology. And
I see what you mean.
You see what I mean? You've got a faction that does the cyber stuff, you've got and so on, and they're all very much, we have this bit of special technology, and you've got that fun sort of end-by-end interaction of X's technology with Y technology multiplied by however many factions you've got. And I mean, yeah, it's a thing, and they're really interesting and clever little bits of technology. But it does feel a bit that all the factions are rather defined by some special ability their force has.
Yeah, actually, that is a good point. Whether it's a downside, I don't know. I think it's.
I don't know if it's a downside. It just is.
Yeah, it just is, isn't it? So,
and if you're, and it really just depends on how you feel a sci-fi world should be. I mean, there are settings where that's definitely the case, but if you go back to something like the Firefly setting, which is completely the reverse because everybody's human and everybody has nearly the same technology, but you still have factions, and the whole thing goes between. I mean, you get to Star Trek where some factions have cloaking devices, some don't, or you go the whole hog, and the whole hog is Planetfall.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, but having said that, that's no different from, dare I say, the dreaded words like 40k.
Oh no,
because that's exactly the way 40k works.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see when the rest of the helixes come out. I think there's, especially when you got the allies, because the allies do give you a little bit of change.
But I think the point being that as it stands, it's very much at that end of the spectrum.
Yeah, no, you're right there.
You pick the Force with your favourite special ability, effectively.
Or you do what I do and pick the ones which look pretty.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah, or pick the one that's going to fight the one that you really, really wanted, but your son chose first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
and
more of a niche, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. My one other gripe, and this is purely a personal thing, is that rule book is nearly unreadable. It's white on black and it's titchy. So I'm sitting here with the black on white print quality PDF and thinking, oh yeah, that's nice. But it is, I mean, okay, so I freely admit my eyesight is crap and I'm not a huge fan of white text on black, but I think that one takes it a bit far.
It's a trap that a lot of sci-fi rule books fall into. I mean, that was my major gripe with Tomorrow's War.
Oh God, yeah.
Tomorrow's War, great set of rules, almost completely unreadable.
You have to go and read Force on Force to understand it.
Yeah, it's one that Quadrant 13, for example, didn't fall into, and prove that you can produce a very sci-fi looking rule book without having to go the ultra cool white on black thing. Dreadball doesn't either, but gets a very good sci-fi look with it. And I have to say that I'm looking at the black on white printable PDF, and it looks pretty damn sci-fi.
I think it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, game companies fall into from time to time, and let's face it, these games are aimed at people that are perhaps slightly younger than us,
yes, it's true.
and where bits of their bodies are still in working.
I don't know what you mean there, young man.
Sorry, speak up.
Hey, what's that?
But yeah, I know what you mean. I personally didn't think it was as bad as all that. But I know what you mean.
Relics is worse.
Oh God, yeah.
I went blind reading the Relics rulebook, which may have had something to do with the rather weird game history, but that's a really unreadable rulebook. It's a pity because it's a really lovely game.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Oh, is that another one we got out to the list?
Are we not doing it anyway? We're not talking to Tor at some point.
Possibly, yes.
Well, we are now, folks.
There's a man who remembers his schedule.
Yes.
Did you not get the memo? Yeah. I think that, it's... I mean, for me, the one reason that I offered to help out Spartan and become a Vanguard is just because this rules. Because in the past, like all of us, I've been really dismissive of Spartan's rules. Because the first versions of the rules are usually pretty bad. But they've changed. And I think with Derek and James coming on board and taking up the mantle of doing these rules, I think they're starting to crack it now. And I think all of the version 2 rules that I've looked at are pretty special. They're really nice, fun games.
So one can hope that version 1 of Planetfall never saw the light of day, you mean?
Well, it came out as a very early beta test, and they gave the rules away free on the forum, and they had 2 little box sets to basically just to try the rules out. And people went away and just tried them. They bought these early sets. So that's where the version 1 figures came from.
That's where your Terrans come from, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So it was part of Spartan's Studio Sparta, which is like their sort of beta area. So it came out very, very light and soft. I think Rich Jones was involved at that stage, but then he literally did a complete rewrite of the rules, and Derek and James and with Neil as well, sort of chipping in and saying, "This is what I want. This is the feel I want." They've come up now with a really good set of rules.
I have to say, I like the rules.
Yeah, they play, and I've got to give them credit for getting the house together, getting the house in order, I should say, because I think that they've always done really good racing stuff, and their ideas and their design work has always been second to none, which is why I've always bought their bloody games, because there's always been one model I wanted to buy. And I wouldn't have bought it, and I tried playing it all, I'm not really sure. And now, likewise with Dystopian Legions, the second version of that is a really good little game. There's lots of little bits in there which you'll recognise from Planetfall, but it's playing properly as a platoon level game now. And it's just little tweaks, and it's just made the game come alive. And same with Firestorm Armada, which is a bit quicker again. So, you've got to give them due for that, due credit for that. And, I've always been a massive Epic fan.
Yeah.
But I really would have difficulty saying which game I actually prefer to play.
Oh, high praise indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We haven't tried, but how do you reckon it would scale up to playing on a bigger table than they suggested?
It's a lot better.
Really?
The game comes alive at about 4,000 points.
What kind of table size are you fitting that on?
6x4.
Well, I play 3,000 points on a 6x4.
Right.
I like having lots of space.
And how many core sets is that?
Okay, for a 3,000 point game, you're looking at pretty much an entire core helix, because that's always your thing, and probably probably two other helixes. For 4,000 points, you're looking at probably 4 helixes of a decent size. But the game, at that point, the game really comes to life, because you've got these tactical decisions of which helix to activate first, and all that sort of stuff. And as you said earlier, the centre part of your core helix, you always have this command unit, which at the minimum is just one stand, maybe with an attachment with it. But when you get to a full core helix, that's 2 large models plus usually an attachment, and it does control the game, or it controls a small area of the game. And
and of course the other thing is that I know they, each army now have these big super heavy Leviathan helixes.
Those are nice.
They are nice. There are some very, very nice ones in there,
aren't they?
And I've already said, I must admit, I just love the imagery that they use on some of them, especially the Dindrenzi one, where they had this big stompy robot, which effectively they deploy by orbital drop. So they literally just drop it onto the battlefield. It's great.
One small earthquake later.
Yes, it's really funny.
That Divinity Leviathan is a monster thing.
Yeah,
it's very BattleTech, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes,
but in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing about them is that they're big, they're big models, but they're not invulnerable. They don't fall. It would be very easy to fall into a trap to say that if your opponent brings a Leviathan, you have to bring a Leviathan, otherwise you are going to lose.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not the case. It is surprisingly well balanced, considering you've got these big stompy robots or big other things floating around the table.
Yeah, and it's also quite nice the way that all the Leviathans have different sort of roles and different. They're all different. They're not all great big stompy robots.
No, they're not.
Like the Directorate one is literally a troop transporter. It's a big troop transporter, but it basically flies around and drops a large APC, which is full of eight stands of infantry.
Yeah, and then acts as a fire support platform.
Yeah, and you've got the other one, the civilian one,
which is a big dinosaur.
it's big, yeah, which is apparently one of their elders, which one of their most respected older ancestors, and they just drop some large cannons to the side. Yeah. So it's not a case of like everyone's going to have a big robot that's just going to sit down and bash 7 bells out of each other. They've all got a different sort of use.
Yeah. So it is, as you say, it's well put together. Got some fantastic models. It is very well balanced, and actually plays a good game that you can actually get played in a couple of hours.
Yeah, 2 or 3 hours, you play a really good game. I mean, to get back to Mike's question, if I was playing like a 4,000 point game, I'd probably play it on a 8x4 if I could, just because I like lots of space. You could do it on a 6x4,
which is actually quite interesting because there are so many games that come out these days, which let's be fair, are primarily designed to sell the figure ranges and are very keen on fitting on a caravan table, for want of a better phrase. It's quite unusual to come across a game that actually scales up reasonably well without having to spend the earth on a 6x4 or 8x4 regular club night table.
Yeah. I mean, they sort of say for 4,000 points, you're looking at 6x4. And to be honest with you, if you drop a Leviathan in there, because you're looking at about 1,000 points for a Leviathan anyway, then, it'll play on a 6x4. But if you wanted to do a 4,000 points and not take a Leviathan and have lots more tanks and stuff, I think the bigger space is better. And I just like playing games on big spaces because it gives you a chance to move things, and try and sort of flank things. I don't like games where you've got car parks full of tanks. If you're going to do that, play on a bloody bigger table.
And don't play Flames of War.
Yeah.
You just have to.
I had to go there, didn't I?
You had to say it.
Well, the funny thing,
I know we were thinking it, but I'm thinking I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
The funny thing is,
I had to go there.
What can I say? It's late. My personal censorship circuits are down.
Yeah. But I played one of the last games I ever played of Flames of War because I was really going off the game because it was a car park. But my mate said, "Oh, let's have a game on," and he's got a 12x6 table, and we played a big game on 12x6, and it was brilliant because we had space. Yeah, and you weren't just rammed onto a little 6x4. You had space to do flanks and all that sort of stuff. Kill my back because I couldn't reach. I mean, the objective in the centre I wasn't even going for because I couldn't reach it. Possibly why I lost because he's 6'6".
Yeah, having spent 2 entire weekends reaching to put a plane in the middle of a 6-foot wide table, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
So I suppose the upshot of this point is that we talked an awful lot about what we like. And we talked a little bit about something which we're kind of perhaps a little bit disappointed, but it's more of a case of the game fits within a certain trope in the current genre.
Yeah.
Is there anything we don't like about it?
Apart from the print on the rulebook?
Oh, apart from the print, yes, apart from the rulebook.
I'm not a big fan of that trope, but that's not the fault of the game.
Okay.
I could do with more figures.
I think we all could.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to sound like a real fanboy, but hey, look.
Sorry, please donate to.
Yeah. Simple fact of the matter is, I like the game. I think they've done well, and that's why I offer to help them. So yeah, if you call me a fanboy, fine. I
think it is without having played Halo Fleet Battles. So we can't speak for that yet. But at the moment, I think I can safely say it's currently the best Spartan game that I've played.
Mm. Well, to give you an example, I did a demo at Firestorm. I didn't even mention this in the previous one. I did So all I was doing was showing people how the rules worked. It was a quick 20 minutes. This is how the rules work. These are some armies, and that was it. And a couple of guys came in. Two of them had played, one of them hadn't. And I showed him the game. Literally just showed him very quick mechanics. And he went and bought a core helix for one of the factions. Sat there, glued them all together, and said, "Right, I want to have a game. Can you umpire for us?" And
those collapsing shells again, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was him. So he literally bought them, glued them, and played the game that morning.
That's a pretty good advert, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. It is, and the fact that you got things. I mean, again, going back to the models again, but the way they've designed it with the fact that actually, you got the model and the base. It's all there. It all fits in together. The base is part of the model, so you don't. Even when you've got like hover tanks and stuff, the bases are designed so that they will look like hover tanks, and you've got you've got actual textured bases and those other bits and pieces. So it's all there. You don't even have to buy extra bases. It's all part. They thought about it really well. It's all part of the model.
Yeah.
So even silly things like people talk about basing units. You don't have to worry about basing units because it all comes with the model.
Yeah.
Mm. There you go. A nice impartial review there.
I mean, I will say right here and now, I won't buy it. But I won't buy it, A, because AD's got 2 box sets to club, and B, because pledge. Although I'm sort of steering around the edges of that.
Well, it's kind of a board game if you look at it.
Because of the pledge. Because of the pledge. Oh,
I would be mildly tempted to pick up a Call Helix of some sort if we were playing it regularly down the club. But part of my problem is I have too many things I want to play down the club and only 4 weekends a week, 4 Mondays a month.
Yes, there is that. Yeah, and again, I mean that's just the general problem of gaming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whilst it pains me to say, there is the outside possibility that you could possibly own too many games. Because
that's dangerous talk.
It's almost heresy, isn't it? But there is this thing of there are only so many gaming days in the year, and at some point you've got to turn around and say, okay, what am I going to play, what I'm not.
Yeah, our club has one of the things we decided to do this year is that last year we had campaign nights, so first Monday was Dreadball, etc., etc., etc. And that meant that, if you were interested in 2 or 3 of the campaigns, 2 or 3 of your Mondays were committed. So this year we said no campaign longer than 6 months. And I very consciously cut down to only playing 2 campaigns rather than the 3 I was playing. And I'm probably not playing any in the second half of the year. And the other problem with our club is that we're possibly a little bit atypical in that you'll find that quite a lot of clubs, they play 40k or they play Flames of War or they play anything Games Workshop, or they'll play about 3 or 4 games, and we, on an average club night, there are 6 different games of them, 6 different manufacturers, and the following week it will be another 6 games, and probably only 2 of them in common.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which sadly means, for example, I haven't played Dux Brit in a year and a half, and I'm missing it like crazy.
I mean, one of those things is that with me, as far as this is concerned. We went down to, when we went down to Somerset, Josh came with us and loved the game, and so he ended up getting a Core Helix, and it's an opportunity to play a war game with him.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of Dreadball, but other than that, we haven't had a chance to game an awful lot, and he's turned around and gone, I really like this game. It's an opportunity to get a few games in with him. So that's another reason why I've done it. As if I needed an excuse. I can't. Playing the dad card is a little bit low. But,
mine's currently hooked on Elite, which I'm.
Oh, Elite Dangerous.
And the Mac version's just come out.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on my hands and my credit card. because I've been winding James up because I used to play Elite on the BBC back when it was the only way of playing Elite. I'm going, space stations used to look like that when I played it.
Yeah.
Back when Elite was proper?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've stopped playing it.
It's the first time
You stopped playing it?
Yeah. I haven't played it for about... I played it for about a month after it came out pretty much solidly.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just didn't seem to work for me, which is really... I love Frontier. And I love the graphics, I love the way it looks, I love the way it flies. But I just don't know, I just didn't like it. Really odd. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, James is actually persuading me to play, which is quite an amusing thing for a teenager. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Okay. I think we can put this one to bed, guys. Don't you?
Indeed.
You put me to bed.
Yeah. Let's step away from that. Right. Okay. Well. I think all that's left to be said is Planetfall. We really like it. Check it out. Go and visit your local Vanguard. Go and visit Cardiff.
Come out to Peterborough.
And
we'll put on a game for you if you want.
Yeah, and give it a go.
Mm.
For a sci-fi game, it's really, really good. And that's even coming from because I've got a gaming opponent who doesn't get sci-fi.
Yeah.
So there you go.
The rules are free. Download them. Get the Orbats free as well.
Indeed, yeah, because that is the other thing, isn't it? It's that, yeah. And I suppose we haven't talked about that enough. The rules are free to download.
Yeah, and try and proxy. Use them.
One of the advantages of being, and I'm not having a go here, but being a company that wants to sell figures, is that you can make your rules free.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Spartan are not the Lardies. The Lardies can't do this, and that's not the fault of the Lardies. It's not the fault of Spartan. It's just because Spartan are one thing, Lardies are another. But the great thing about this system is, if you want to get into figures, go download the rules and go download the print copy of the rules, because you'll actually be able to read them. I know, I had to go there.
Yeah.
Not that he's bitter or any sort.
No, I'm just half blind.
Indeed. So they, that is the advantage of a miniatures company.
Yeah.
So go check them out. And proxy the figures. Go roll some dice.
See if you like the system, and if you do, go cross Spartan's palm with silver, because they're really, really, really pretty miniatures.
Yeah.
And the other thing to say about, and because one thing I don't know if you've actually mentioned, but the packaging, it is one of these things of, okay, this is the way the rules work, this is the way the army building works. So at the point where you say, okay, I need a helix, you don't have to buy 3 different blisters. You just go out and you buy a box, and then you go and buy another box, and then you go and buy another box, and everything you need is in the box. And it is, it's been well thought out. Okay, some would argue, it's just good marketing. Yeah, it is, but it does mean that it's no hassle to get into the game, because they have done the job for you.
Yeah.
And frankly, compared to certain companies I could mention, not actually that expensive.
No, they're not. No.
I mean,
it's a sci-fi game, so you'll pay more than you pay for a standard. For most historical games,
the box set is £80, for which you get. I'm not about to try and count the number of figures, but if you try and imagine what it would cost you to get that number of vehicles in 28mm with a certain company that rhymes with lame shirt shop.
Lame shirt shop.
You'd be an awful lot poorer.
Yeah.
And on that note,
yes.
I hope you've enjoyed this review and whatever else this has been of Planetfall.
We're really sorry you have to edit this, Neil.
And the utter chaos that has been caused by having Mr. Whitaker on the second half of the show.
Yay!
And thank you for listening. Thank you for getting this far. I hope
I'm still trying to work out why Mike is justified buying Sales of Glory because he's got an 18-foot piece of blue lino to use up.
I'm not. It isn't even at my house anymore.
What, you mean somebody else is looking for the floor?
No, Andy, our scenery builder, has it because he's the only car it would fit in. He's the only person who owned a car into which we could actually get a 6-foot roll of lino and a 6-foot model of the Murder Dam.
What's he driving, a bus?
A very large Audi estate.
There we go.
No. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, take care, happy gaming, and it's bye from all of us.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help us to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.